Hello and welcome to TVB News. The city's top court upheld the decision to allow a British barrister to represent media mogul Jimmy Lai in his national security trial. The judges stressed the court's full commitment to safeguarding national security, but said the new arguments presented have not been properly heard in the lower courts. Refusing to back down, Chief Executive John Lee is asking for Beijing to step in to interpret the law over the case, citing its far-reaching implications for future cases and how these foreign counsels are not supposed to practice in Hong Kong. Jackie Lin was at the court.
The Court of Final Appeal struck down the government's last-ditch attempt to bar King's counsel Timothy Owen from representing Nix Digital's founder Jimmy Lai in the upcoming national security trial. In the written judgment, Chief Justice Andrew Cheung, permanent judges Roberto Ribeiro and Joseph Fogg said the Secretary for Justice had fundamentally changed his case in the appeal when he introduced radically new points and raised undefined and unsubstantiated issues said to involve national security. This as the Department of Justice asked for a blanket ban on the admissions of overseas counsels in national security cases. Government counsel Rimsky-Yoon also raised concerns over the enforcement of overseas counsel's confidentiality obligations, saying there's no guarantee these foreign lawyers will protect state secrets. The judges say the issue is highly important, but such novel arguments have not been properly mentioned or explored in the lower courts, and allowing such new points to be taken on appeal could entail unfairness to the defendant. In the verdict, the judges stressed the courts are fully committed to safeguarding national security and act effectively to prevent and suppress any contravening behaviors. They added national security is plainly of the highest importance. Jimmy Lai, founder of the now-defunct Apple Daily newspaper, faces a trial over charges including conspiracy to print, publish or sell seditious publications, as well as conspiring with others to collude with a foreign country or external elements to endanger national security. Earlier, the Secretary for Justice had been rejected by the Court of Appeal in his attempts to block King's counsel Tim Owen from defending Jimmy Lai. That's for Lai's national security trial, which is set to begin on December 1st. Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Chief Executive John Lee has announced he will invite Beijing's National People's Congress Standing Committee to interpret the law to address the issue. Less than 3 hours after the Court of Final Appeal announced its decision, John Lee said he will ask the NPCSC to interpret the issue concerning the use of overseas lawyers in national security trials. He said the issue concerns the intention and objective of the national security law and whether overseas lawyers without the right to fully practice in the city can be involved in cases related to threats to national security. 7 prominent Democrats who were earlier convicted of participating in an unauthorized assembly in August 2019 have lodged appeals to the High Court. All 7 people are appealing against both their convictions and sentences. 3 of them, media tycoon Jimmy Lai, as well as former lawmakers Lee Chuk-yan and Leung Kwok-hung, were taken to court in a correctional services vehicle this morning. The other 4 are the founding chairman of the Democratic Party, Martin Lee, and former lawmakers Margaret Ng, Sid Ho, and Albert Ho. They were earlier found guilty of taking part in an unauthorized assembly at Victoria Park on August 18, 2019. 4 of them were sentenced to between 8 and 18 months in jail, while the rest, including Martin Lee, were given suspended sentences. The current hearing is expected to last 3 days. The Shenzhou 15-manned spaceship will be launched tomorrow evening at 11:08 p.m. from Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwest China. The spaceship will take a crew of 3 taikonauts into space. A spokesman for the China Manned Space Agency said at a press briefing that their mission is to construct the Tiangong space station in orbit. The crew members are Fei Junlong, Deng Qingming, and Zhang Lu. Fei will be the mission commander. He participated in the Shenzhou 6 mission, while Deng and Zhang are flying to space for the first time. The crew will join the Shenzhou 14 taikonauts aboard Tiangong. This is the first time for China's manned space program to run 2 Shenzhen spacecraft at the same time and have their first ever in-orbit crew rotation. In South Korea, the government met with a striking truckers' union today. It is the first time the two sides have held talks since the nationwide walkout began 4 days ago. The government estimates daily losses at about 300 billion won as supplies of cement and fuel for gas stations run short. Thousands of unionized truckers launched their second major strike in less than 6 months last Thursday. They're seeking better pay and working conditions. The action is already disrupting supply chains across the world's 10th largest economy, affecting automakers and steel producers. The strike is also disrupting cargo shipments. President Yoon Suk-yeol criticized the strike, saying it is taking the nation's logistics hostage. In a Legislative Council meeting today, the Transport and Logistics Bureau said there had been a significant drop in the city's air cargo volume. The decline came after a ban on the import and sale of e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products took effect in April. The government is now planning to seek a legal amendment to allow the re-export of the products.
Whilst we want to ensure the ban of importation of ASPs, we would like to keep our status as an international logistics hub. What we propose is to enhance the current regulatory regime. Well, under Import and Export Ordinance, that is CAP 60, we will put in place a new regulatory framework to enhance our regulation.
When
the administration drew up this piece of legislation, has it considered the overall economic situation of Hong Kong? I think they have not. They have no idea of the economy of Hong Kong. You are all making amends afterwards. Why did you not think about this long ago? You shouldn't be talking about this only at this moment.
Welcome back. Russian forces continued heavy strikes on eastern and southern Ukraine as repair crews scramble to restore power, water, and heating in key cities. With snow and cold weather expected to hamper both sides on the front lines, Ukraine's president believes Russia will launch more missile strikes over the coming days. Civilians, meanwhile, are leaving the southern city of Kherson as Russian forces kept up their bombardment of the area. Nazvi Karim has more.
This woman in Kherson City prefers to stay where she is, so authorities are providing her with essential supplies. This person, though, is one of numerous elderly residents who have agreed to be evacuated from the area as Russia continues to bombard the city with artillery from the other side of the Dnipro River. A harsh winter with no electricity, water or heating is no place for the elderly, as the Ukrainian government, along with volunteer organizations, speeded up evacuations. With the frequency of Russian attacks on key Ukrainian cities easing over the weekend, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he expected new missile launches across the country. As long as they have missiles, they unfortunately will not calm down, Zelensky said in his regular address. He also called for Ukrainians to stick together. This after he accused Kyiv Mayor Vitaly Klitschko, a former world champion boxer, of failing to do enough to help residents in the capital. Klitschko responded by saying political infighting amid heavy Russian airstrikes was senseless. The town of Kamyanka, some 300 kilometers southeast of the capital Kyiv, has certainly felt the full force of Russian strikes. In fact, Ukrainian security forces say the village has officially been wiped off the face of the earth. Close to the front lines of the war, the military says not a single house or building has been left intact after fierce fighting for several months. Around 1,300 people lived here before the war, but now, with no infrastructure or communications, only a handful of residents remain. Meanwhile, the United States military is reportedly running low on available weapons to supply to Ukraine. Reuters reports that the Pentagon is considering a proposal by Boeing to supply Ukraine with cheap, small precision bombs that can be fitted onto rockets. The so-called ground-launched small-diameter bombs are among U.S. plans to provide munitions to Ukraine without depleting stockpiles for its own defense needs. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
Canada launched its long-awaited Indo-Pacific strategy Sunday, outlining $2.3 billion Canadian dollars in spending to boost military and cybersecurity in the region. Canada vowed to deal with what it calls a disruptive China while working with it on climate change and trade issues. Tracy Furness has more.
The plan, detailed in a 26-page document, said Canada will tighten foreign investment rules to protect intellectual property and prevent Chinese state-owned enterprises from snapping up critical mineral supplies. Canada is seeking to deepen its ties with fast-growing countries in the Indo-Pacific region. But the focus is on China, which is mentioned more than 50 times during a period when bilateral ties are frosty. Canada Foreign Minister Melanie Joly said Sunday that China and North Korea were security threats.
China is an increasingly disruptive global power. The North Pacific, our neighborhood alongside Japan and South Korea, is facing real security threats from North Korea as it continues reckless missile launches, and from China, who continues to challenge international norms. In response to increasingly complex threats to Canadian security in both physical and digital spaces, we are investing to promote peace and security throughout the region. We are increasing our military presence, increasing also our naval presence in the region.
She said that Canada will engage in diplomacy, but at the same time will be firm, continuing that the country now has a transparent plan to engage with China. Xiao Lijian, the Deputy Director General for Information for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China, said today that Canada's strategy smacks of ideological bias, hypes up the so-called China threat, and makes unwarranted accusations and attacks against China. He said China strongly deplores and firmly rejects this. He said China has always been a builder of world peace, a contributor to global development, and a defender of international order. The document underscores Canada's dilemma in forging ties with China, which offers significant opportunities for Canadian businesses. And its outreach to Asian allies comes as Washington has shown more caution of free trade in recent years. Tracy Furness, TVB News.
And back at home, the city logged 7,793 new COVID cases today. That's 240 infections fewer than yesterday. Local cases accounted for 7,188 infections. 9 residents from 9 care homes for the elderly and the disabled tested positive for the virus, while 20 people were listed as close contacts. 2,255 cases were reported by 886 schools, with 8 schools suspending some of their classes for a week. No new mutant strains were found among the 605 imported cases. Another 26 COVID patients have died, with the 5th wave having claimed the lives of 10,505 people in the city so far. Meanwhile, residents can receive the BioNTech bivalent vaccine starting Thursday. As of yesterday, around 11,000 people had already registered online for their jab. A recent study showed that nearly 60% of people living with HIV have increased their use of telehealth services during the pandemic. The Hong Kong Coalition of AIDS Service Organizations and a pharmaceutical company have jointly developed a telehealth app. As Timothy Lee reports, the app allows people living with HIV to manage their physical and mental health through a game-like interface.
People with HIV have long been stigmatized as social pariahs in Hong Kong. Many of them feel embarrassed to seek medical help. In an effort to find out how these people receive medical support during the pandemic, the Hong Kong AIDS Foundation conducted an online survey among 200 people living with HIV and individuals at risk between June and September. The organization hoped to find out the number of people who utilize telehealth services as part of their HIV treatment. The results showed that 58% of people living with HIV and 25% of individuals at risk increased their use of telehealth services during the pandemic. The survey also revealed that around 40% of both groups felt uncomfortable about the lack of in-person contact when using telehealth services, while the same percentage said they felt worried about data privacy issues when using such services.
The yearly reported cases reached its peak in 2015. So at that time, it's actually more than 700 cases per year reported. So it's been declining since then. And then for this year, in the first half of 2022, we have about more than 200 cases. We have very effective treatments right now. So people are living longer and longer. Actually, the life expectancy for our HIV-infected patients nowadays is almost approaching people without HIV infection.
In a bid to help more of these individuals through the telehealth approach, the Hong Kong Coalition of AIDS Service Organizations has worked with a pharmaceutical company to develop a mobile phone app that monitors both the mental and physical health of its users. The app also uses cartoon animal characters and a minimalistic interface to simplify its usage. Stephen, who was diagnosed with the virus over 20 years ago, said he was satisfied with the app's analysis of his case.
The app is very simple. Because in the program inside, some show me how to eat the medicine. If I have a problem, I can get a remark in the app, and then for the next time, see the doctor, and then we can ask the doctor what the problem.
The My Care Diary app provides users with daily reminders of their viral load, as well as useful information including their daily medication and sleep quality records. The company that developed the app revealed the next updates for the app include the introduction of a user avatar, as well as more detailed information of the patient's HIV status. Timothy Lee, TVB News.
And police in Brussels fired tear gas to disperse crowds after violence in the aftermath of Belgium's 2-0 defeat by Morocco at the 2022 World Cup. Dozens of rioters overturned and torched a car, set electric scooters on fire, and pelted cars with bricks. Police moved in after one person suffered facial injuries, according to a Brussels police spokeswoman. Brussels Mayor Philippe Clos urged people to stay away from the city center and said authorities were doing their best to keep order in the streets. Even subway and tram traffic had to be interrupted on police orders. Morocco's victory was a major upset at the World Cup and was enthusiastically celebrated by fans with Moroccan immigrant roots in many Belgian cities. That's the news. Money Matters is up shortly. See you then. Bye for now.